So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So today's session is about how you can increase your chances of getting a scholarship when you apply for a master's or PhD degree abroad. Right? Some of you are not Jamboree students, so for your benefit. So Jamboree has been into GMAT, GRE training, and university admissions counseling since 1993. We have physical centers in 39 centers, 22 cities, and 4 countries. We have a very strong digital presence as well. Our classes have been running online since 2012. And so even during this pandemic, our students are, they are taking their classes online. They are allowed to come to the center and speak to the faculty as soon as we open up. Right. So some of you are probably taking classes with us anyway. Right? So we one data point that we are very proud of is that every year about 20% of our students end up getting 320 or more on the GRE, and for GMAT, so about 25% of our students end up getting a 700 or more. So if you want, those of you who are not Jamboree students, if you want a free demo class of GRE or GMAT to see how we teach, to see how our teaching methodology is more helpful to students, you can leave your number in the chat and we can we'll schedule a demo for you. And in case you want a profile evaluation session where our counselors will speak to you to understand what your profile is, what kind of colleges you can target with your current profile, or if you have a kind of university in mind, then our counselor can look at your profile, let you know if there is a gap in your profile, what you can do to fill that gap, what kind of GRE score you should target, etc., etc. So if you want a profile evaluation session also, you can leave your number in the chat. I see that quite a few of you are typing, so I'll let you finish your typing. Right. Moving on. So today we'll discuss a little bit about the different scholarship types. What are the factors that lead to universities giving out scholarships, and then what you can do to improve your chances of getting scholarships. Right. So these are the things that we'll try to cover today. The how the session would run is that first let me cover this information. This is some information that I want to communicate. So while I'm speaking, please do not type any questions in the chat window. After the session is done, we'll have a Q&A session. So that's when I'll take up your questions, right? So right now, just, sit back, relax, listen to the information. This session is getting recorded, so you don't have to take notes. The recording will be made available on our YouTube channel within the next 7 days. So before even going to scholarships, just understand that there are 2 types of fees. When you go to university websites and look at their tuition fees page, you will see this language. So one is called in-state fee. So this is what is paid by their domestic students. So if you're applying to the US, then US citizens will have to pay this. If you're applying to UK, then the UK citizens will pay this. Right? So this is called the in-state fee. Right? Then you have got another, it's called outstate fee. So outstate fee is what is applicable to you. So for international students, outstate fee is what you have to what is applicable to you. Now if in-state fee is X, then outstate fee is usually 3.5 to 4X. So outstate fee, or the fees that international students have to pay, it is far more than what their domestic students have to pay. Right? So be careful of the lingo. So when you are like, let's say you have a budget of, you have a certain budget and you are checking out university websites for the fee information. So use only the outstate fee, not in for your calculations, not the in-state fee. The in-state fee is not applicable to international students. However, if you get any scholarships or tuition waivers or RAT, etc., then you're, in addition to the stipend, you will have to pay in-state fee. So there's double benefit of getting any assistantships or scholarships. The first type of scholarship or financial aid that's available to international students is assistantships. So assistantship, there are different types of assistantships: teaching assistantships, research assistantship, graduate assistantship, right? And all these assistantships are often combined with fee waivers. Now, assistantship means that the university will give you give you some money, but you have to work in return. Either you work as a teacher, as an assistant to a faculty, or you work in the research group of a professor, or you do some other work. The university will assign you some other work, which is not necessarily fixed, right? They are just called graduate assistants. It can be something like managing a professor's website, or arranging the computer lab, or just maintenance of the equipment in a certain lab, etc. So these, the work that a graduate assistant does is kind of miscellaneous in nature. But the teaching assistantship and research assistantship, so you're fixed, you're working for a certain faculty. So this is often combined with fee waivers. So if you are getting a teaching, if the university is giving you a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship or a graduate assistantship, then automatically your fees, the fees that you have to pay, will also reduce. You don't have to pay outstate fee anymore. You will have to pay in-state fee. So your fees becomes 1/4, almost 1/4, right? Plus you will be getting a stipend to take care of your cost of living, etc. And what our data says, especially for the US universities, most Indian students end up getting some sort of assistantship after the first semester. So even if you do not get an assistantship right at the time of admission, once you go there, once you perform well in the first semester, you may end up getting, a lot of Indian students, they end up getting some or the other sort of assistantship. On the other hand, scholarships and fellowships are offered by the university, not by that specific professor. Scholarships are handed out mostly, scholarships and fellowships both, they are handed out on the basis of merit. And the big difference between scholarship and assistantship is that you have to work in return for an assistantship. For scholarship, you don't have to. Whatever scholarship you get, maybe they will give you, let's say, $20,000 per semester or $10,000 per semester. Whatever scholarship they give, it will be just given to you. You don't have to do anything in return, right? So scholarships are anyway a little more difficult to get because of that reason. However, assistantships are the ones that are most, more available, especially for international students. For PhD students, those of you who are planning to apply for PhD, the good news is that most universities give 100% scholarships to PhD students. So PhD itself is a fully funded degree. Again, this is more applicable. This is more useful for students. For students who are applying for PhD, applying to for the PhD in US and Canada. They are far more flexible when it comes to giving scholarships. Now, next part is that factors impacting scholarship decisions. How do universities decide whether to give you a scholarship or not, right? So that is an important decision. What are the decision points? Do they look at your GRE scores? Will they look at your TOEFL score? So what are the criteria based on which universities take these scholarship decisions? First thing is that it depends completely on the university. So it does not depend on the ranking on the university. It just depends on the university. How much funds do they have? It also depends on the program. So for the same university, mechanical engineering or material science engineering may have more scholarships available than computer science, right? Industrial engineering, engineering management, they may have more scholarships available, more funding available than computer science. Another reason is that computer science is anyway a very, very, a competitive degree. A lot of students, about 60% of Indian students who apply to the US for US and Canada, for their master's degrees, they apply for computer science. Therefore, there is, it's very difficult to end up getting a scholarship or end up getting an assistantship for if you're applying for computer science. However, for other programs where the competition is not that much, there is more scholarships available. The biggest factor, based on which universities decide whether to give you a scholarship or not, is your research work. What kind of research work do you have in your bachelor's degree? That matters a lot, and it matters in all the colleges that you apply to. US, Canadian, UK, German colleges. So all the universities, for them, your research profile is the most important thing, based on which they decide whether to give you scholarships or not. I will talk a little bit in detail about what's the meaning of this research profile. Next thing is that it's important for you to have a strong academic record. Your bachelor's degree grades are important. You should be at least in top 20% of your class. For students who have lots of backlogs, etc., it becomes difficult. It becomes difficult to be considered for scholarships. Another, when you finally start applying, so you will be writing a document called the SOP, statement of purpose, right? So this is also a very important piece. You should be able to highlight the strengths in your profile. You should be able to talk about your current research interests and future research interests in your statement of purpose, because a lot of universities, instead of looking at your GRE score, etc., they will be reading your SOP to see whether you are interested in research or not, whether you can do independent research or not, and that becomes a key point while making the decision for scholarships. Now this is more like a cutoff, like a TOEFL score of 100 or an IELTS score of 7.5, right? If you are taking IELTS, let's say. So if the university is giving you a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship, then it's understood that you will be working for a professor. Now, to be able to be a teaching assistant or a research assistant, you should have good English skills, right? You should be able to write papers. You should be able to communicate. Therefore, they are going to look at your TOEFL or IELTS score. TOEFL and IELTS are, are language tests, language comprehension test, very basic English test. So for TOEFL, you have to get at least 100. For IELTS, you have to get at least a 7.5. So more than your GRE score, your TOEFL score, you may have a 340 or 330 in your GRE, but if you don't have a 100 on your TOEFL, then uh, universities may think that you may not be able to like write well, or hence you may not be able to write reports, etc., properly. So if you are interested in to be considered for scholarships, etc., for assistantships, etc., then make sure that you get a good TOEFL or IELTS score. It's not that if you get a below 100 you will not get at all, but your chances will definitely improve if you get a score above 100. So these in short are the criteria, right? Then one thing that you have to do is networking with professors. Have you been in touch with professors, of the university to which you are applying to? If a professor wants you in his or her research group, then then that is the most important thing. Then the university won't even consider the rest of your profile. So it helps if you can start interacting with professors after you have shortlisted the universities. Start interacting with the professors. If Ask them whether you can be a part of the research group or not, and if they say yes, then then that's done. Everything else becomes formality. So the networking with professors, especially for PhD students, is extremely important. I will again talk a little bit about how to go about it. So research work, what is included in research work? What is research work, right? Projects, any kind of project that you may have done. Engineering students anyway do a project as a part of the final year, but any other projects that you may have done, that those would count. Paper presentations and publications, especially publications. Those of you who have any publications, national or international, it's a massive plus. Among Indian applicants, less than 5% students have publications. So if you are able to get a paper published, it will definitely help you a lot. industrial training or internships, so you have to present them, as like research work, so they also count towards your research work. Participation in seminars, conferences, paper presentation competitions, even at the college or department level. So this, it can also be presented as researcher. And by participation, I don't mean that you are just sitting and listening. By participation, I mean that you have like presented a paper there, etc. It's or you have discussed something, participated in some project, etc. It's not just going and listening to the seminar, right? If you have conducted the seminar in a sense. Participation in activities of academic societies, every college, for especially for the engineering programs, there are societies. IEEE is there, CSC is there. For mechanical engineering, there will be similar societies. For architecture, there will be similar societies. So these are like international societies which have chapters, local chapters in colleges. So if you are a member of these, if you have like participated or conducted their activities, that will add value to your profile, right? So these all of these are included as all of these are included as research work, right? So, and I mean, you have to present them as research work when you write your SOP, when you write your CV. For people with work experience, some of you may be working, so for people with work experience, uh, just if you have been able to publish any white paper, if you have been able to work in projects where you did research, so all of that can also be written up or presented as research work. So research work means where you had to do independent research, you know not just like do stuff or take courses, but where you have to search for information, draw conclusions, design experiments or methods, right? So all of that comes under research work. Technical blog, if nothing else, in those of if you, in case you are not able to get any publications out, if you're not able to have any paper presentations, then the last thing that you can do is that create a blog and publish there. Whatever you could not get published, publish there. That's which is called a technical blog, right? Technical does not mean only engineering. Anything related to finance, maybe you are a BCom student, you have done some work around market research around marketing, or some article you may have written about finance. So all of that is not the last, as a last resort, you can have a blog which has these, right? So that also, as I said, as a last resort, that can also be presented as research work. Now remember, I had told you that a statement of purpose is very very important. So now when you sit down to write your SOP, just make sure that your SOP is good. We did a session completely about how to write a good SOP, but I'll just summarize the points that we talked about there. An SOP should tell a story. It should not only be about vocabulary. A good SOP should, after reading your SOP, the admissions committee should get answers to these questions. What do you want to pursue? So the degree that you want to pursue. So that should be mentioned in the first paragraph itself. Do you have the academic background, or do you have the background to pursue that degree, right? So this comprises of the majority of the SOP. So around 75% of your SOP would be about this. You will be talking about the academics that you may have done, the projects, the research work, or no, any work experience. So all of that would be under this category. So as I said, this would be the majority of the SOP anyway. Why are you applying to that particular university? So there should be a paragraph about this, about answering this question, and the information in that paragraph should be specific to that university. A lot of students apply to multiple universities with a single SOP. No problem with that, but in every university, make sure that you change this one particular paragraph. So the information in this paragraph must be specific to that university. This is where you should mention the name of the professors that you were in touch with, right? or the names of the professors with whom you want to work, so that when your application comes to the department, they can forward your application to those professors, and if they have room in the research groups, they may interview you, they may consider you, right? So do make the information in this paragraph as college specific as possible. The last point is, why should the university admit you? This is where you have to talk about yourself, your strengths, your career goals, anything that is unique about you, anything that sets you apart from your peer group. This can be something, if your extracurricular activities are very good, you can write about it here. If there is any challenge that you have overcome, any personal achievement, anything that is, as I said, this is where you have to look beyond the numbers, any kind of accomplishments that you may have done, anything, as I said, that sets you apart from the rest of the applicants. So this has to be the final paragraph where you finally wrap up your SOP as well. So you a good SOP, after the admissions committee member has read your SOP, he should get answers to these four questions. So be very careful while writing your SOP. Spend enough time on it. If you think that you can write your SOP in 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, so that is usually not a good idea. Write the first draft of the SOP, then after a couple of days, reread it and see if you can modify it or improve it. So the SOP, the first SOP that you would write, it you should invest at least a week to 10 days, to write the SOP. It is a very, very important piece of document, not just your scholarship, even your admission depends on the quality of your SOP. So invest enough time in it. Networking with professors, as I mentioned, what is meant by that? So networking significantly improves your chances of getting research assistantship, and international students, they mostly get research assistantships. Teaching assistantships are given out usually, are given out usually to students or to applicants who have research background, right? Sorry, teaching background. So if you're a professor, if you are a teacher, if you have any kind of teaching experience, then they would consider you for teaching assistantship. But research assistantship is what most international students end up getting. And how to improve your chances of research assistantship? If you start networking with the professors. So how to network, right? Just steps for networking, and this is extremely important for PhD students, even master students if you want scholarships. But for PhD students, getting admission itself, this is an important step. So go to the department homepage of the university that you want to apply to. Find a list of faculty from that page. Go through the research areas of each faculty. Pick 2 3 faculty whose research areas match your research interest, or match your final year degree project, whatever you want to choose. Email this faculty before applying and after applying. So write the names of this faculty in the SOP for that university, and then when you write to the faculty after submitting the online application form of that university, include the application number in the subject email. So when you write to universities, you have to to professors, you should write to them before applying. Once you have finalized the university, you should write to the faculty, and the faculty may reply also, right? And definitely write after applying, right? So the after applying is what will help you get the scholarships, right? So after applying, what should you do? After applying, include the application number in the subject of the email ID. So see, this faculty, they receive a lot of emails every day. So for them to be taking your email seriously, it's important for them to know that you are a serious candidate, that you have already applied to that university. Therefore, definitely write to them after you have sent in your application for that university. Right? And even professors are pretty responsive. They usually reply to their emails. So if you don't get a reply the first time you write to them, if you don't get a reply, just write to them again after 10 days saying that you may have missed my earlier email, essay karke, you should write, talk about that, right? So every 10-15 days, do keep on dropping emails, wish them Merry Christmas, wish them, Happy New Year. Basically, stay, even if until you get a response, do keep on writing to them, not the same email, and not like too frequently, but do pursue them. Right. So these are the things that the universities look at, and these are things you can do, to improve your chances of getting scholarship. Right. So this is, some people, they ask, whether there is a separate application for scholarships. So there is no separate application for scholarships, right? So the scholarship, the online application form itself is the scholarship application. There is the application form for admission is itself a scholarship application. You don't have to write a separate application for scholarship. However, to increase your chances of getting scholarships, you should be doing these things, right? Make a good SOP, do strengthen your research profile, and do start networking with professors. So that's all the information I wanted to communicate. If any of you, if you want to see, whether your profile is suitable for a scholarship or not, or what are the chances of getting an assistantship with your profile, then leave your number. We'll be able to have a one-on-one discussion with you. In case you have any question, you can raise your hand now also. And those of you who don't have any question, you can feel free to log out. Thanks for joining us. I hope you got at least some information that you can use during your application. Yes, Parv Rustagi, what's your question?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
I wanted to know if how do I approach any professor, like email or LinkedIn? LinkedIn is also
Email.
okay. And if by chance a professor, denies that, so do I approach him again or do I move to
So if
another one?
somebody straightforward says that this year I'm not planning to take on any research assistant, then yeah, then that's okay. Then you should not. You should just say, okay, thank you for your response. I hope I get admission, and I would look forward to interacting with you. And then stop interacting. But then contact some other faculty, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Right. Uh, Anubhuti Goel, what's your question?
Hello.
Yeah, hi Anubhuti.
Yeah, my question is if I have multiple projects with my job experience also. So I wanted to ask which project should I mention? The major projects which I have completed or the which are related to the field I'm applying for?
See, if you have lots of projects, then what you can do is that, you can definitely, you will be mentioning all of them in your CV. In the SOP, mention the ones that are related to the program that you are applying for. But do mention everything in your CV.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Tanvi, what's your question?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, does the scholarships don't depend on the application rounds? Means if I apply in application round 1 and 2, I'll be getting more percentage of scholarship, and if I apply in the last round, that scholarship amount will be reduced. Is that anything like that, or everything will
Are
be
you
same?
applying for an MBA program?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So because for MS and PhD there is no round per se. For MBA, see, after round two, there are usually no scholarships available for international students. So but till round two, it's fine. In round one, whether you apply in round one or round two, your chances will be the same. But after round two, then for international students, they usually don't have many scholarships left.
Okay, means for example, like if we have some good GRE and then good IELTS score, then there may be chances, or definitely no.
No, round three, they, the websites would also say, categorically, they would say that the scholarship, all the scholarships are reserved for students who apply in round one and round two.
Okay, okay, fine. And to network with the faculty means if there is a different background now, actually I have done my BTech. So there I am having all the research work, projects, paper presentations and all. So now to ask the faculty for the research, how can I do? Because I don't have
Have
any
any?
very.
Do you have any work experience?
Yes, yes. 2 years of work experience as a software engineer.
Okay. And you want, so when you're now applying for MBA, you can say that you have always liked doing research, you have a research bent of mind. So now that you're applying for management, you would want to continue doing research, right? So
Oh,
you are an engineer. So, I mean, just to be on the safe side, so a lot of these professors, they do a lot of, for research around the quantitative side of things, analytics, side. So maybe apply, do contact those professors, saying that you want to work in, whatever skills that you used for your research, for engineering research, like number crunching, analysis of data, etc., etc. All of that you want to continue, so you can talk broadly around that, the fact
oh,
that you like doing research, rather than the specific topic of research.
oh, okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Anup Sharma.
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, ma'am. My question is this: ma'am, I went through some of the professor profile of international universities. Then what I found out that like their research is like something which is beyond what we are doing here in India. So, like, suppose if I want to pursue some research in quantum mechanics or such kind of thing, and I have not worked on such kind of thing till now, and the professor is of that background, then like how shall I mail him so that he get impressed from my mail and he will revert me back?
That's okay. Obviously, when you're going for a higher degree, obviously the research would also be of higher level.
Yes, ma'am.
So but at least at the basic level, so what is your bachelor's degree in,
In electronics and communication.
and what kind of projects have you done? What is your final year project?
Ma'am, currently I'm pursuing my BTech, so I have worked on optical device and IoT, such kind of embedded project till now.
Uh, so look at the broad area. There will be, especially
Okay.
in the ECE, under the ECE department. So
Okay.
embedded systems is a very, very broad topic. So apply
Okay.
to faculty who are working broadly in the embedded systems domain.
Okay.
Okay, and when universities, when you're looking for universities, go for the universities whichever whose electrical and computer engineering department is joined. So like the masters in
Okay.
electrical and computer engineering, if you look for, you will see a lot of
Okay.
professors who are doing research in embedded systems,
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am,
right?
one more question I have. So basically, when this professor will give us research assistantship, right? So they are going to give us from the project fund they have, right? Like any
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
project they have,
Yep.
out of that only they are going to pay us. So, like, how to know which professor has how many numbers of project and whether he is working on it currently or not? Is there any source from where we can get to know this kind of information?
See, how many projects a professor is working on, so that you will know from the research area. Sometimes they say the ongoing projects, but otherwise what you can do is that, uh, do you know of Google Scholar?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, so go to Google Scholar, type out
Okay.
that professor's name, and then so you will see, what are the most recent papers that this professor has published. So you will get
Okay.
to know which are whether the professor is currently working on that field or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Spurs Jindal, what's your question? Spurs Jindal.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yep.
Yeah. So, ma'am, my question is actually I'm pursuing my BTech, but I'm more of interested in kind of management courses, like sort of management plus technical courses. Like my 75% interest is in management and 25% is in technical. So, can I switch from like as I'm pursuing my BTech in IT background. So can I switch into that management side?
Yeah, see, there are for you people like you know, who are you should look at degrees like masters in technology management, masters in engineering management. So a lot of good prospects in terms of jobs, etc. So do check out these programs: masters in engineering management and masters in technology management.
Okay. And ma'am, how to contact the like I'm actually confused regarding the professors. Like how to actually see these professors?
Yes, in you mean find?
Like yeah, ma'am.
What do you mean by C?
Ma'am, how to actually contact the professors related to these background, like in management and engineering sciences, and as you told.
Right. So again, you know, if any university is applying, offering the engineering management program or technology management program, so go to that program's website. There will be a section of for faculty, so you will be able to find the faculty.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right. Manish Tiwari, what's your question? Manish Tiwari.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, my question is, I have done BTech in mechanical, and I have gone through some project like I have done a prototype model of a hydropower generation plant. But I think that it is not relevant. It is not effective because, ma'am, it already like it's a copyright of the thing which is happening in the field, ma'am. So. Uh, I have achieved some certification like I got a entrepreneurship network certification in a competition, as well as I got a certification in my relevant work experience also. So can I mention these two certification as a like a key point
These certifications
in
will
my
come under.
SOP?
Yeah, you see, you can mention, and these certifications will come under the category of academics. It will not come under the category of research, right? So when you mention that your research, you know, is that your project is not relevant, so don't see. One thing to say is that when you have done projects, you know, so you it is not mandatory that they have to be in the same domain in for which you are applying for a master's degree. So by the presence of projects in a student's profile just shows that this person can work independently, can have does this person has a research bent of mind. So that is what the university is looking for. Because no matter what project you may have done or you may be doing, so it's not mandatory that you will end up doing the same kind of project in your master's degree. So universities just want to see whether you have the ability to do the research or not. That's all, right? So don't think, you know, whether
Okay,
this is
ma'am.
relevant to my degree or not. Like I have had students who, like, you know, they have like studied as electrical degrees, electrical engineering project related to electrical engineering, but applying for industrial engineering. So you know, it's not possible for them to do relevant projects, but it's not important that you do relevant projects, right? Unless you are applying for PhD, of course. For PhD, it is important, but for masters, it's not. If for master's programs,
Okay, ma'am.
universities just want to see that you can do research. That's it. That you can write a research report. You know, that you can, you know, present a study. That you can analyze data, draw conclusions. Those are the skills that they are looking for, right?
Ma'am, uh, ma'am, by writing a SOP, it is written that I have to mention some story. So how can I write this story? Like,
No, by
uh,
story, I don't mean like, once upon a time there was an engineer kind of story. What I
hmm,
mean is that a flow should be there. A lot of students, SOP, they write in bullet points. So that is not a narrative style, right? So by story, I mean,
hmm,
it should be like, okay, why did you first get interested in this? What did you study in your bachelor's degree? So it should be a coherent, like natural story, that by story I don't mean a fiction story. I just mean that the content is more important than just writing. It should be interesting for the admissions committee to read. It should not be just a combination of different things that you have done. It should not be like a bullet point kind of thing. That's what I meant, right?
okay, ma'am. So can I like I don't have to write these type of things that I have risk taking abilities or
No, that yes. No, remember I told you that in the last paragraph you should definitely tell them little bit about yourself. What are
okay.
what are the qualities that set you apart. So if you think that you have a risk taking ability, or that you have like taken risks in your life that
Hmm.
have paid off. So if you have something around it, definitely write about it.
So like if I write this thing, I have to mention an example with it.
Yeah, yeah, of
That
course. Of course, yes.
okay, ma'am. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Okay. So we'll take one more question. And so, if I have not been able to answer your questions, you can leave your question in the chat window, and do leave your number and the city so that we can know where to call you and answer your question. So, if I am not able to take your question, let's write your question along with your number and your city. Okay. God, let me pick. Yeah. Brijen Dixit, what's your question? Brijen
Hello.
Dixit, you can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Ma'am, my name is Brijin. Currently, I'm working in Indore and Bhopal in investment firm, and I have completed my background in MSc, Master of Science, in 2015 in computer science and mathematics. And since last year, 5 years, I'm actually working in finance sector. And now I'm planning to go for my second master's, most probably MBA finance. And currently, I'm working in research itself as a technical research analyst, as a technical researcher. And so like what are my chances to get into like to get a scholarship from top? I'm also preparing for the GMAT, but of my own. So like what are my chances? And also like I have completed some of the project work, and I am also the like official training partner for many of the reputed broker firms like Reliance Securities, Alice Blue, where I'm training their existing clients as well as their employees. So I'm looking as of now, but like fundamentally I'm weak. So technically I'm very sound in finance, but fundamentally to learn the like value investing, private equity, investment firm, that is something which I'm looking for. And age is 27, so I'm planning to go like abroad. So like what are the chances, like which are the best locations? So I'm looking for all options, Europe, as well as the US and Canada. So to get a good scholarship, what are my chances? And also I've like completed two paper, and very soon like I will be publishing them. One I have already named it, that's the empirical study of the financial market in India. So very soon, I think within a month, I'll be publishing them. And I've also like completed many of the paper presentation across many of the colleges and universities uh, in MP region. So that is my question: like how to actually formalize each and everything into like a story or SOP, whatever, to get a good scholarship. Thank you.
So, Brijan, first of all, I think you are attending the wrong session. This session is mainly for MS and PhD students. For MBA, we had already done the session last week, so it could have been useful for you, where we did discuss about scholarships and how to finance your MBA kind of thing. So, did you happen to attend those?
No, ma'am. Actually, I think I haven't in that case because I got a message just before 6 o'clock. So I definitely think I got.
So on Jaguar's YouTube channel, you will probably find a recording of the there is scholarship information. It's like how to go about a scholarship is a little different for like people like you, for people going for hardcore MBA versus people going with the master's route, right? So anyway, for in your case, your profile sounds good. It's interesting profile. So one important thing for MBA students, that the GMAT score is very, very important, extremely important. For GRE students, for scholarship, for masters and PhD students. So the scholarship is more a factor of their research profile and etc. And their academics, and not so much the GRE score. But for MBA students, the GMAT score is very important. So Brijen, to in spite of writing great essays or all of that, if your GMAT score is not good, then it might be a little tough. So so for, if you, in your case, if you're targeting the top 30-40 universities, then you have to target a 720, 730 kind of GMAT score, at least, right? So that should be a, like, literally non-negotiable thing. And then the rest of the thing, of course, so you can start contacting the professors, etc. That you can anyway continue doing. But yes, the GMAT score would play a very big role.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so thanks everybody. That's all for today. Thanks everyone for joining this session.